Did the infamous plank torture really exist? Did the famous scene from movies and books, where a blindfolded prisoner walks a plank over the waves until falling, actually happen? First, it's important to know why pirates mistreated prisoners. Pirate violence against prisoners is not just a Hollywood myth. Corporal punishment and torture were well known and confirmed practices among them. Be careful. This violence was usually about survival, not just sadistic pleasure. This displayed and sometimes staged violence had a surprising goal. It was intended to limit fighting by urging prey to cooperate and not resist. This pirate wariness toward fights may seem counterintuitive, but it's easily explained. During the golden age of piracy, in the late 17th and early 18th centuries, even a minor wound infection could be fatal. It was better to be feared and inspire terror, so targeted ships would allow plundering and leave unharmed. This allowed captures to happen without a fight. And in this context, it was sometimes necessary to carry out spectacular and memorable punishments to avoid future fights. In fact, some pirates understood this well and made sure to build a terrible reputation for this very purpose. For example, French pirate Sois l'Olonnais was so feared that captured prisoners preferred death over falling into his hands. The Frenchman earned his fierce reputation by tearing out tongues and torturing prisoners who resisted him, and this to such an extent that his dark legend claims that one day he even tore out a prisoner's heart with his bare hands, sufficient to make his enemies negotiate instead of resist. But what about the infamous plank torture? Did it have its place in this context? Well, in our imagination, this public torture involves blindfolding a prisoner, forcing him to walk on a plank that's suspended over the sea until he falls off and drowns. So it's an execution designed to be spectacular. In fact, the English expression walking the plank describes this. This punishment even appears in a slang dictionary by Dee, where the author states that it's a way to get rid of condemned people or officers during a mutiny on board a ship by blindfolding them and forcing them to walk on a plank placed over the side of the ship. By this means, the mutineers assume they avoid the penalty for murder. For example, it is said that the famous pirate Bartholomew Roberts actually forced a prisoner to walk the plank for this purpose. While other similar stories circulate, especially about the legendary Danish pirate John Laird Drake. But here's the truth. All of this is most likely a myth whose origin is an 18th century book. That's how it is in a book published under the title A General History of the Pirates, telling the lives of 35 pirates. Published under the pseudonym Captain Charles Johnson, that's where the plank myth began. The author is now thought to be either British journalist Nathaniel Mist or the famous writer Daniel Defoe, who wrote Robinson. Crusoe describes in the introduction pirates from antiquity sailing on the open sea and setting up not a plank, but a ladder over the water, from which their Roman prisoners were invited to swim back home. When the prisoner stepped on the ladder, the pirates dropped it to make him fall. By the way, just as an anecdote, this book also contains relevant information, since some archaeologists who specialize in pirates still use this work today to find shipwrecks and analyze them. The 18th century, when this book was published, was very productive with about 2,000 maritime history books written then. This productivity fueled 19th century excitement, boosted by the Romantic movement, which shaped our modern image of pirates. Walking the plank is mentioned in various fictional works of the time, like Stevenson's Treasure Island, where pirate Billy Bones refers to it, and by the press of that period. But when it comes to the historical pirates of the golden age of piracy, there aren't really any verifiable stories about this punishment actually being carried out. Today we know that if they wanted to get rid of someone, they would just throw them overboard or maroon them. This meant leaving someone on a deserted island without any dramatic setup. But then, since walking the plank isn't actually documented in the context of pirates, when it came to doing something spectacular and the pirates didn't want to get their hands dirty, What did they do? They didn't have to search far, as they just used the punishments already in place in the regular Navy. That's how the punishment of keel hauling was carried out. The condemned person was tied to the end of a yardarm, which is that long piece of wood that supports the sail, and then simply dropped into the water. Depending on how serious his crime was, he could be repeatedly pulled up and dropped up to 5 times, raising his drowning risk. There was an even more brutal and almost always fatal version of this punishment, called dry keel hauling. The principle is the same, but the rope length is set, so the fall stops just above the water. This could dislocate or even tear off the victim's arms. Due to insufficient evidence, walking the plank is now believed to have likely not been a pirate practice in the 17th and 18th centuries. However, some clues and stories, still hard to verify, leave doubt about whether this punishment was ever used, even in rare cases. We know for sure that this now iconic image became popular in the 19th century before recent popular culture adopted it. For example, as seen in the famous Peter Pan cartoon, also in cinema like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and in various video games. Did you think pirates actually use the plank as punishment? Tell us in the comments, but first, I have something to share. Producing these documentaries requires a lot of editing work, several days of research and writing, often done in collaboration with historians, and the talent of specialized illustrators, like Edward, whose beautiful illustrations you have enjoyed. Currently, advertising revenue alone can't cover these costs. And so, if you want us to keep digging into history, far from cliches and without shortcuts, you can join us on Typee starting from €1 per month. Your support makes all the difference and also gives you access to the behind the scenes of this adventure, so you can join and support us. The link is in the description. If you enjoyed this documentary, you'll love the next one.